More importantly, let's talk about Elias Pettersson. Now, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, technically Wednesday morning, Elliotte Friedman at 12:04 in the morning. I know because I was in my prayer hour, but I was 5 minutes late to my prayer hour, so I saw it just as I was walking in. He released an excerpt from his latest 32 Thoughts podcast with Elias Pettersson. And I admit, I have not listened to the whole podcast episode. I've only seen the 80-second clip that was on Twitter. But aside from talking about Petey's love for big cities, it was talking about, well, thanks everyone for the nice compliments on the color for sure. Petey talked about this. Petey talked about the fact that he's not in a rush to sign a contract extension. And if you saw my video, if you heard me talk about this over the past couple of days, flat out, I'm 100% okay. Would I say on board? No, I'm okay what Pettersson said, and I'll explain why. But basically, we know that Petey had a 3-year entry-level contract, 3 years. His second contract was also 3 years. 3 plus 3 makes 6. And we know that you don't become unrestricted free agent, a UFA, until the end of your 7th year. So 3 years ELC, 3 years in a second contract, that's 6 years only. So that means his next contract will basically, if it's only 1 year, walk him straight to unrestricted free agency, and then he can sign with any other team. So the absolute worst outcome is if Petey says, I do not want to sign long-term, and give me a 1-year contract, and then basically I'm out of here. That's what Matthew Tkachuk did to Calgary, and Calgary did not wait for that last season. They traded him right away, and I actually liked, despite how this year worked out for Calgary, I actually liked the return they got in Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau. It's just that Matthew Tkachuk had such an awesome season with Florida, leading them to the Stanley Cup Finals. So remember, Elias Pettersson is in year 3 of his second contract, or think about it as year 6. So he's under contract for this season. So don't freak out. You can't worry. Don't worry that he's not playing this year. He is. He's under contract for this season. What he's not under contract for is next season. And he can sign a new contract that kicks in July 1st, 2024. He could have started to sign that. He could have signed that anytime from July 1st of last month. So yes, it's been 7 weeks since he hasn't signed, and I think we should get ready for another 7 months, because PD basically said that he's in no rush to sign right now. Now, I think some people got scared because in that interview, he also said, I don't even know if I'm going to sign short-term or long-term. Now, obviously, as Canucks fans, if you like Pettersson, you don't like hearing that. You want him to sign long-term. When you re-sign your own free agent, you can offer up to 8 years. Other teams can offer a UFA 7 years. So that's the built-in advantage, the home court advantage, so to speak. Home ice advantage, probably a better analogy. That's the advantage of having a home team, the current team, sign your own UFAs, is that you can offer them 8 years where other teams can only offer him 7. But remember, no one can offer him anything right now because he's still under contract for this upcoming season. So obviously we want it to be done sooner than later, but I don't think that's going to happen, and I'll explain why in a couple of seconds. But before that, I want to recognize another donation from legendary Lucas Gates. The legend says, Elliotte Friedman woke up Twitter X and chose violence. Twitter X reaction as per usual. Remember, RFAs could mean we could bring him back. This isn't a UFA, fortunately. Exactly. Kind of what I've been saying. Thank you, Lucas, for reiterating it. We have all the rights in negotiating for Elias Pettersson. And speaking of legends, the legend himself, Hot Take Hockey. I believe he's still in Toronto. He's breaking Auston Matthews contract news, which I'll talk about in a second. But really quickly, Hot Take, while you're here, I love it when you're here. I love it when everyone's here. But Hot Take, give me your quick hot take. $13.25 million, Auston Matthews, 4 more years. Tell me about it in the chat. John, give me your scoop. Right, I watched your video, but I don't want to spoil it. Let's hear it from you in 200 characters or less. I think that's all you can type, at least every 20 seconds. John, give us your quick hot take on the Matthews contract. Auston Matthews kind of interesting. We've been talking about contract lengths. He did his 3-year ELC, And then he did a 5-year contract straight out of his ELC, kind of like what I think Quinn Hughes did 6, but Matthews did 5. But the tricky thing is 3 plus 5 is only 8 years. So that second contract that Matthews signed for $11.4 million a year, technically at the end of this season, he's going to become a UFA, an unrestricted free agent. So there was a chance that the Toronto Maple Leafs actually would lose Auston Matthews at the end of the season. So just think all this angst about us losing Petey, dare I say, because at least Petey was still going to be an RFA, it was amplified in the Toronto market because right now Matthews is a better player than Pettersson, and because Matthews was a UFA at the end of his current contract and not an RFA. So you put all that angst, all that turmoil, all that anticipation, that nervousness together, and no wonder people were wondering, well, what's going to happen with Auston Matthews? Well, we got our answer, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, when Auston Matthews signed 4 years, $53 million. So that's $13.25 million. Is it 13.25? Yeah, $13.25 million a season for 4 seasons starting next year. And basically, it makes him the highest paid player in the NHL, exceeding Nathan McKinnon, exceeding Connor McDavid. And let's go. He's an expert, so let's get his thoughts right away. Hot Take says, I predicted 12.5 for 3. 12.5 for 3. So I look at this as Matthews had a lot of leverage. I'll take this outcome all day, every day, versus what Tkachuk did to the Flames, for example. So great hot take. That's why he's so smart. That's why he's got a big channel. He was close on he did 12.5 for 3, but Matthews gets a bit more because he signs for an extra year. So 12.5 is what Hot Take predicted. 13.25 for 4 is what Matthews got. So John was certainly in the ballpark. But more importantly, yeah, he said this. Matthews obviously had a lot of leverage because he got another year at almost $750,000 more per season than John's prediction. But I love what John said. And it's exactly, see, John's smart and I pretend I'm smart. It's exactly what I just said about 5 minutes ago about Pettersson, Tkachuk, and how that could be a similar outcome, which we don't want to happen. Again, Tkachuk basically said he wanted out and he got traded right away. He says, I'll take this outcome all day, every day, versus what Tkachuk did to the Flames, for example. And that was basically saying, I'm going to play out my contract and then I'm going to leave. Instead, Matthews has got 1 more year this season on his former contract that paid him 11.4, and then he's got 4 years. So technically, he had to play this season, although he could have basically said, trade me now because I'm not re-signing with you, and that's kind of what John's alluding to. So Auston Matthews, this season plus 4, so at least 5 more years for Matthews. And then Hot Take also follows up by saying, worth it. Cap will go up significantly. McDavid will make $60 million per year in 3 seasons. Great point. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. What I was going to get that with Pettersson. You can't blame Petey for not wanting to sign yet for many, many reasons. Number one, the salary cap is going to go up. Maybe we know a bit more about it 6-8 months from now. And we know that the Canucks will have room to sign him. So that's not an issue. The salary cap's not a big issue for Petey or for any of these stars, actually, because we know it's going up. We just don't know by how much. Number 2, what happens if the team stinks? What happens if Petey does not want to sign here long term? That's why he said short term versus long term, not sure. Imagine if the Canucks struggle again. Imagine if they, God forbid, they fire another coach, their 3rd in 3 seasons. Imagine Petey simply says, well, I've given you 6 or 7 years already. I want to go where I have an actual decent chance at winning. You guys, that sucks, but that's a possibility. And I think the biggest thing is Pettersson is counting on himself even having a better season than 102 points. So why would he sign now at an X number? Let's say $11 million a season, for example, where imagine if he puts up 105, 110 points. Now that number is $11.5 or $12 million for this player. So Petey is banking on himself. There's some risk, obviously, if he gets hurt or if he has a down season, then maybe you're taking some money off the table. But this situation is a little bit different than JT Miller. JT Miller still had a year left on his contract, but he signed on Labor Day last year because he was coming off of his best season ever, his 99-point season. That's why he signed his 7-year, $8 million a year, $56 million total contract last year, even though he still had a year left on his contract. Petey, same situation, a year left on his contract, but he's banking on having an even better year this season. So for all of those reasons, I have no problem with Petey saying what he said. I have no problem with him not signing yet. I'll have a problem if he doesn't sign long term, but we can worry about that when we get to it. I think he does want to see how the season starts, and he's trying his best not for it to be a distraction. And I think it's going to be, unless they flat out say, no, I'm not taking any questions about contract negotiations until after Christmas or whatever it may be.